welcome back to my channel, Beautiful Minutia. If you're new here, my name is Tiffany, and today I am doing the reluctant TBR tag. I recently saw Chloe Frizzle doing this tag, and I thought it was so fun. She kind of mashed up a couple different tags and then added some questions of her own, but this tag is essentially just talking about books that are on your TBR, but maybe you're kind of hesitant to read them for various reasons. So without further ado, let's get started. The first question is, show me a book that you want to read, but it was a soft DNF. So for me, this has got to be Moby Dick by Herman Melville. I didn't stop reading this book because I wasn't enjoying it. I stopped reading this book because I got overwhelmed and just weighed down and had way too many plans going on. And so I started reading this book, I think, in April. And I've just finally come to the terms that I'm not going to finish this book this year. But the unfortunate thing is that I tried to start it in 2023 also. So I've had two false starts. The first false start, I actually only read like 1 or 2 chapters. This time I got a quarter of the way through and I just ran out of time, and I didn't want to just grudgingly read it. I want to read it when I have the time and space to give it the attention it deserves, because I actually was really enjoying it. Question number 2, show me a book you want to read, but you've read another book by that author and you didn't enjoy it. So for this one, I'm going to go with Dial A for Aunties. I actually read another book by this author earlier this year. It's the Vera Wong one, and now I can't remember the title. My brain just totally blanked. But the thing that I loved about that book was I loved Vera's character. And so I feel like Dial A for Aunties has more of those characters, so it might have more of the humor. But there was a lot of things that I didn't really like about Vera Wong. I felt like it was like kind of fun, but I really like the characters, but I didn't find the mystery to be that great, and I wasn't invested in the characters, and it felt like she was trying to do some like really emotional things that just weren't working for me. I just wanted the whole book to just be Vera, but we switch perspectives. So I feel like if I have a whole book full of aunties that act like Vera, maybe I would enjoy it more, but I do have some trepidation because I did have some issues with Vera Wong. The next question is, show me a book that you want to read, but it's brand new and you don't know when you'll get around to it. So I have 2 books for this. One of these is actually a brand new book that I don't have my hands on, but I am interested in reading, and that's The Nightmare Virus by Nadine Brandes. I have read 3 of Nadine Brandes' books so far, and I have thought 2 of them were pretty good, and one of them was great. But I really like, she writes Christian YA fantasy, and I think that the ones that I've read have been spectacular for the YA age range. This one I have heard doesn't have a romance factor into it, and that was the part that I didn't like about some of the other books. They felt a little insta-lovey to me, and I just didn't love it. So I'm really curious to see what she does with this one. The other one is a book that I've just obtained recently, and I don't know when I'm gonna get to reading it, and that is Clara and the Sun by Kazuo Ishiguro. I have had mixed experiences with him, where I do like his books and I like how they end, but sometimes I don't always like the journey getting there. But I've heard really good things about this one. I think this one is a little bit more on the sci-fi end of things, but my sister just bought me this book, and so it is the most recent book that I have obtained, and I don't know when I'm gonna actually get to it. The next question is, show me a book that you want to read, but the cover is painfully ugly. There are a lot of books that I could hold up for this, but I'm gonna go with this Korean folktales book because I don't think that this cover feels even remotely indicative of Korean folklore. And I could be wrong because I haven't read that much Korean folklore, but like, look at this guy. It's like some sort of weird mask, but he also looks like a berry. And I'm just very, very confused about why this cover was chosen because it's not an appealing cover at all, but I do really want to read it. The next question is, show me a book that you want to read, but it's a classic book that might be good for you, but you're not that interested. And this is another book that is a potential soft DNF. Might go back to it at some point, and that book is Don Quixote. I got almost halfway through this book before I DNF'd it. I didn't quite finish the first book because there's 2 volumes in it. It just started feeling really repetitive to me, but then I read a book with my daughter, like a King Arthur book, and all of a sudden I was seeing all these things about chivalry and the way that Don Quixote was acting in that book. And I was like, oh, some of the things that he was doing makes a little bit more sense now, and I feel like I have more context for it. So I do want to go back to it at some point, but also like I'm really not excited to go back to it at some point. Question number 6 is show me a book you want to read, but it's humongous and intimidating. So I'm going to go with a series for this that has some really humongous books in it, but this series itself is also quite large, and that is Wheel of Time. I feel like everyone says to read Wheel of Time because it is a really influential fantasy series. And there's also the fact that the author died part of the way through and Brandon Sanderson finished it. And I've heard that the Sanderson books are incredible, but it's so long. Like the series is so long and each of the books is so long, and it just feels like so much of a commitment, especially when people tell me, oh, it's so good, but like the middle 3 or 4 books are a slog. Sir, these books are like 1,000 pages long. What do you mean 3 to 4 books are a slog? That's thousands of pages. I'm just so filled with trepidation to even give it a try. Question number 7, show me a book you want to read, but you feel like you need to read it because it's hyped and you're not really excited. That's got to be The Thursday Murder Clubs. Everyone talks about this book and they love it. And there's been like 3 or 4 books. I can't even remember. There's been several books and I feel like I should be really excited to read this book. Yet I'm not. Maybe it's because I just haven't been in a mystery mood for several years now. I went through a stage where that was almost exclusively what I was reading, especially when I came back to reading fiction. I had like a couple of years where I was mostly reading nonfiction and not much else. When I came back, I was reading a ton of mysteries. And so that lasted a year or 2. And then since then, mysteries just haven't really been as much of my jam. But I still feel like I should read it because everyone loves it, even people who tend to not like cozy mysteries. Question number 8, show me a book you want to read, but you need to be in a specific mood to enjoy. So for this, I could put really any George Eliot book that is on my TBR. So some that come to mind immediately are The Mill and the Floss and Adam Bede, because those are 2 that I really, really want to read. And it's not that I necessarily have to be in a specific mood to enjoy George Eliot. It's just that she demands more of me as a reader than a lot of other authors that I read. And so I love her, but it takes time for me to read her books, not only because they're long, but just because the prose requires me to engage my brain more than other authors. So I feel like she's worth the payoff, but I have to be in a place where I have the mental bandwidth to give her books what they deserve. Question number 9 is show me a book you want to read, but you're on the fence about continuing the series. So I have 2 series for this. The first one is a manga series that I've really enjoyed this year called Kuma 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 Bear. And it's about this girl who loves video games and she falls into this video game world and she's dressed in a bear suit that gives her all these amazing buffs, but no one takes her seriously because she's in a bear suit. It's really cute, really funny. I really have enjoyed when I've read it, but the last few that I've read, I just haven't felt very invested in it because it's much more of like a palate cleanser type series. So I'm just kind of like not sure if I want to really continue with the series. Another series is Keeper of the Lost Cities, and this is a middle grade series, fantasy, really fun. One of my daughter's favorite series of all time. And I stopped after book 8 because we didn't have, I think, the next book yet. And now we have like the novella and the next book that go after that. But these books are so long. They're like anywhere from 500 to like 800 pages. And I feel like we spend half of the book rehashing previous books. And so they end up feeling kind of repetitive to me and just like super long. And there are mysteries that are introduced in like book 2 that have like no resolution by book 8, but they mention it every single book. There's also the fact that this is also a series where the author has 1 book left in the series, book 10. And instead of releasing book 10, she's releasing a novella that has a section of the story just told from another character's perspective, which I don't want to sound rude here, but it feels like a cash grab to me. And I know people have been waiting for a long time for this series to be completed. And from what I understand, she's had multiple children, like given birth to multiple babies during this time. So there's a lot happening in her life. So I feel like she's trying to give her audience something to tide them over until book 10 comes. But at the same time, it just feels like a cash grab, and also more hundreds and hundreds of pages that don't really further the plot. That ended up sounding a lot more harsh than I intended it to. I don't think they're bad books at all, and I've actually enjoyed reading them when I did. I just feel like they're so long. Question number 10, show me a book you want to read, but it's been on your TBR for a really long time. That's got to be Watership Down. I actually looked at my Goodreads, and this is the first book that I added to my TBR on Goodreads, and I've owned this book for I don't even know how long. I need to read it. I've never read it. It's a classic, and lots of people read it in school. I never read it in school. But then in the same respect, I think my daughter's supposed to read it either next year in school or the year after. So I'm like, well, should I just wait and then I can just read it with her? So I don't know what I'm gonna do yet. Question number 11, show me a book you want to read, but it's a genre outside your comfort zone. So for this, I'm gonna go with The Extraordinary Mrs. Kipp. This is a Christian fiction, and I have heard nothing but like really positive things about this, but I've read a lot of Christian fiction that I've heard nothing about positive things, and I hated it. And so I'm like really hesitant, but I have a couple people that I really trust who are also very, very picky about their Christian fiction, because I am, in case you couldn't tell. It's not that I'm anti-Christian fiction, because I am a Christian and I love deep literature that explores things of faith, but I find that a lot of Christian fiction doesn't explore within any depth at all. It either feels like really like in your face with like no subtlety or nuance of conversation, or it feels like there is nothing at all. And so it feels like it's either like, well, it was a clean book and the character mentioned they prayed once, so it's a Christian book, or it feels like it's just like very in your face. And I want something that has like nuance and depth and makes you think really deeply. And I don't know if this is that book, but I have some friends who really did enjoy this book who are also picky about Christian fiction. So it is one I want to pick up. Question number 12, show me a book that you want to read, but despite owning it, you'll likely never read it. I'm going to link my Read or Rid project for you that I did earlier this year, because it's got 12 books that I chose to read this year, or I need to get rid of them because they've been on my shelves for way too long, and I have read very few of those books. But if you'd like me to be a little bit more specific, I will just tell you the book that I was supposed to read this month, September, and we'll see whether or not I actually get to it. That's Hester. I have a lot of historical fiction, and that is a genre that I don't read super frequently. So this is not, I don't know, I feel like a lot of those are very similar too, where it's like a lot of them are like World War II. It feels like there's just an oversaturation. This is not World War II. This is supposed to take place in the same time period as Nathaniel Hawthorne writing the Scarlet Letter. That's the name, Hester. I don't really know. I actually have not heard good things about this. So that's another reason why I'm not sure whether or not I want to read it. But I totally did get suckered in by the cover, I'll admit that. Question number 13, show me a book you want to read, but it's only out of obligation to a book club or friend recommendation. I don't read books based on friend recommendations, like an obligation to read this book because a friend recommended it to me. But there are some times where books get chosen for my in-person book club, and I never would have read that without my in-person book club pushing me to do that. I don't have any coming up that I feel particularly hesitant about, but we are in the month of September reading Cain's Jawbone, which is a mystery where like all the pages are out of order and you don't even know who is being killed or who the murderer is, and it's something that like only a few people have ever solved this mystery ever, because it doesn't give you the answer. You have to try to figure it out, and then you can mail in like your guess and see whether or not you're correct. And I guarantee you I would not have picked up this book if it weren't for my book club. So I'll put this here, even though I'm not like dreading reading it, but it's also one that I don't think I'm gonna be like, oh my gosh, this book is the best ever, because I'm just not great at solving mysteries. Show me a book you want to read, but negative reviews have made you less excited. So I think that's going to be The Murder at the End of the World by Stuart Turton. I loved The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. I haven't read The Devil in the Dark Water yet, but I've always wanted to read more by him because I thought that 7.5 Deaths was brilliant. I really enjoyed it. But I have been hearing like really mixed things about this. I don't think I've heard anyone say that they love it. So if you read this and you love it, let me know. I've heard some people say that they thought it was decent, and then some people say that they thought it was disappointing. So I don't even know if it's worth my time. The last question, question 15, is show me a book you want to read, but it hasn't come out yet. That's got to be Wind and Truth by Brandon Sanderson. This is book 5 of the Stormlight Archive, and oh boy, am I so excited for this to come out. This is coming out in December. Oh, I'm so hyped. This has been the year of Sanderson reading for me, actually, because I read book 4 of the Stormlight Archive earlier this year with a friend, and then we've read through the Mistborn books this year, and then I'm also reading through Skyward, and so this is like a very Sanderson heavy year, but that doesn't stop me from being like so excited to read this book. If it was out, I probably would have been ditching reading plans and already starting it. All right, so I am supposed to tag some people. So I am going to tag Kelly from Kelly Reads All Day, and I'm going to tag Anne from In Search of Wonder. I'm also going to tag Dia from Novel Idea. I'm going to tag Amanda from Book Lover Amanda, and I'm also going to tag M. I think her channel name is M's Endless Bookshelf or something like that. I'll put it on the screen. I feel my brain just blanked, so I'm really sorry. Also, if you haven't done this tag, consider yourself tagged, and I would love to see your answers. Or you can just answer some of the questions in the comments below. I would love to hear your thoughts. What are some books that have been sitting on your TBR, physical TBR or whatever, just a list of books you hope to get to, and for one reason or another, you're just not getting to them. They are reluctantly on your TBR. I would love to hear. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please hit like and also subscribe so you can continue to see more bookish content from me, and I will see you again next time.